Hi there. The past couple of years have been really interesting. I know a lot of people have been looking into what their next job is going to be in something that's called the Great Resignation. A lot of people have been slugging it out in their home offices, and well, after a while, you're just ready for the next jump. Today, I want to talk with you a little bit about how to plan and prepare for your next role. As mentioned, I'm Rachel Lee Nabors. I work on React's community and documentation at Meta. And today, I wanted to start by telling you that everything you know about the job hunt is absolutely 100% wrong. We enter into our new jobs imagining that they're going to go on indefinitely. You start this new job, this new relationship with this group of people and a company, and you feel like this is it. This is forever. You can lose sight of the fact that nothing is forever. Safety is an illusion. On a long enough timeline, every single one of your coworkers isn't going to work at that company any longer, and the same goes for you. There's a scene in this animated movie based on The Last Unicorn where this immortal unicorn is transformed into the lovely young Princess Amalthea. And even though she's this young, beautiful woman, the first thing she says is that she can feel herself dying. She can feel herself now marching toward death. That's great. That's wonderful. Well, in the same way, no sooner do you start your job than you're already on a timeline to leaving that job. Now, here's how we usually think that moving on to our next role works. We start by deciding that we're going to quit, and or maybe we get fired, or company gets downsized, whatever. We know that the end is coming. Then we start interviewing. Then we get a job offer, and then we accept the offer, right? There's a problem with this structure that really puts you at a disadvantage. You see, the problem is that by the time you've decided to quit, you're probably burnt out. You have to start preparing to interview. You're under pressure, and you're definitely not going to be able to negotiate in your best interest by then or make good decisions. You'll have to pick something. You'll have to jump from the burning building rather than being able to sit back and say, I don't like any of these, or I think this could be better. I'm happy where I am. You aren't in a position of power and relaxation, and that puts you on your back foot, puts you in a disadvantage. So now here's the top secret timeline that actually puts you, the employee, back in control. First, interview regularly. Interviewing shouldn't be something that you're like, oh, I'm going to prepare for interviewing. No, you should just be regularly sprucing things up, sprucing up that resume with the latest cool stuff you've been working on, sprucing up your skills, doing some code challenges. This should be a regular part of your work routine. Consider it like your toilette that you do. Next, get job offers lined up. If you're interviewing regularly, not constantly, but regularly, you should have a regular stream of job offers coming in. That means when you know it's time to quit, not when quitting has been thrust upon you by fate, you can turn around and accept an offer that's already been lined up for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about interviewing for fun, not just for profit. Now, many people make the mistake of only looking for work when they think that they are ready, or they have their skills lined up, or they've done 100 leak codes. The problem with this is that you can miss exceptional and timely opportunities by always waiting until you feel like you are perfectly primed and ready for the next thing. You are, done with your current role. You've got your skills all set at 100, and you're in that mind space. There are opportunities streaming past you 24/7. A lot of them are amazing, and if you were just present for them, you might actually find that you are ready for that new opportunity, or that your skills were good enough, or see where your skills need improvement in a way that cramming right before an interview isn't going to tell you. Let's dive in a little bit on this. Informationals. These are not interviews. Informationals are things where you just meet up with somebody, you have a coffee with them, you ask them about what they're doing. It's great for meeting people in your space and adjacent, people you look up to. This is a really great way to learn a lot from peers and role models. And it's low pressure. You're not, I would like to talk with you about a job. You're saying, I would like to talk with you about your job. I would like to see how you're doing things. I'm interested in this space. Do you have time for a coffee, a quick Zoom chat? You'll do a lot better at your own job, your current job, for having this cross pollination of ideas. And you also put yourself top of mind in case they have any cool opportunities coming up that you might be interested in. Now, don't wait until you're ready to quit to start looking for your calling. There are some great books about exploring things from right where you are. Your current job, by the way, is a perfect testing ground for what you want to do next. I highly recommend the book Designing Your Work Life if you feel like you're stuck at the job you are. I mean, come on, we've all had to work a job because we had important things, responsibilities that we had to deliver on, and we were stuck there. But that doesn't mean you can't start testing out some things that could point you in the direction of what your next role is while you're there. Pivot is another book, a little bit more aspirational for people who definitely know they're going to be leaving their current role and moving on to something different. It's a little bit different. Both of these books have slightly different approaches to how you workshop that from right where you are. Now, ideally, your resume, your CV is always up to date. I like to do this by writing my CV while I'm working. At the end of a great project, I will revisit my resume and my CV and see if it's, more important or more awesome than my current lineup of things. And typically, if you've got a good job and you're doing work that you're really proud of, this is a regular occurrence. So you're constantly fleshing out that resume with all your most recent work. You're able to put into numbers that show the impact that you had. And this is an excellent way to make sure you're not just staring at a blank sheet of paper when you're stressed out and you have to bounce. You know what? You just pull that PDF out of the stock folder and you're ready to go. Now, interviewing itself is a skill. This is something I've heard all the time since joining big tech. Interviewing is a skill and you have to practice it. And practicing at regular intervals is actually a great idea. I know some people who practice once a year. They'll do a little interview tour de force, usually during a slow period. Some folks will do it about 3 to 5 times every 6 months. This will help you get confidence that this is just an interview. You've done it before. You'll do it again. This isn't, a life-changing, oh my gosh, if I don't make this interview, nothing will go right for it. No. You've done this before. You're doing it again. Par for the course. You want me to whiteboard what? Yep. I was a little put off by that 6 months ago. So I spent some time doing some whiteboarding with my friends, and now I'm more confident about that. You start to desensitize yourself to rejection. Because when you're not looking for a job and someone says they don't want you for a job, you don't care as much. When you're desperate for a job and someone says they don't want you for a job, well, that's a lot. That can be a real blow to your confidence. But if you've been practicing this in low pressure environments, you sharpen your skills, you desensitize yourself to rejection, you depersonalize the experience, which puts you in the right frame of mind for giving an awesome interview. Another thing, batch these interviews. That is to say, do them in like 1 or 2 weeks as opposed to doing one a month for 12 months. I recommend this because each interview is practice for the next. And if all those interviews happen to turn into offers and you do find out, oh my gosh, looks like the company's having financial troubles and I might want to jump ship. Well, now you've got a bevy of offers that can turn into a great negotiation setup for you. Now, a lot of people say, but Rachel, I'm going to feel guilty about interviewing. I love my job. I love my coworkers. But let me level with you. First off, all your coworkers are going to leave your job too at one point or another. Second off, your job is not a person who lies awake at night thinking about you and is going to say, I can't believe they left me at the crack of dawn. It's not, it's a company. It's a self-organizing structure of human beings. It doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't have feelings. It certainly doesn't care about you. You like the people you work with. You'll probably work with them again in a different structure in the future. Put yourself first here. You're not cheating on somebody or your job. Everyone you work with is going to go, and you need to practice for the time when you go as well. I like to track my interviews using a spreadsheet. I've included a template at this cute little URL. I'll have a link to a bunch of these URLs at the very end. But if you go there, you can get an idea of this Google Sheet and how I've got it set up. And this is how I keep track of who I've interviewed with, who my points of contact are. This is great if you're in an emergency situation, maybe between your interview courses and you need to follow up. You can go back through here and see who you've spoken with already and who might be good to reach out to now. Okay, so getting feedback from interviewers is the single most informative thing I have actually done with my own career. This feedback, you don't want to be pushy about it. Not everyone who interviews you wants to follow up because it can kind of feel like maybe you as the interviewee are going to try to change their minds. But if somebody you've interviewed with does offer to give you feedback, does say, I'd love to share, we're happy to have a debriefing or something like that, take them up on that. And if they don't, maybe put together a little anonymous survey and just say, hey, I'd really love your feedback. How did I do? If you can, drop me a line if there's anything I can do better next time. This is totally a role I'd love to take in the future. And, any feedback you can give me helps me chart the course for a role like this. And sometimes people follow through on that. That feedback has been some of the most useful feedback that I've had in my life. At one point, I remember interviewing for an engineering management role, and the feedback that I was so kindly given was we didn't see you had enough experience resolving conflict between, high performance engineers. And that let me know that maybe I wasn't putting myself into a place where I was responsible for the two other people's collaborations. And maybe I needed to be taking on projects where I could do that more often. So that changed the sort of things that I was looking for in my day to day. You might find something similar in your own experiences. Now, this one's really key. You want to focus on what stories you want to tell in interviews. After you've gone on enough interviews, you're going to start noticing that interviewing is just storytelling times with coding experiments and some whiteboards. But it's really about telling stories about the projects you've worked on and the things that you've done. I think about the stories that you're telling. Think about what managers want to see in these roles, and then maybe modify how you act at work and the projects you're taking on to match the kinds of stories you want to tell in your next round. Ask yourself when you find yourself in a tough spot, what kind of story do I want to tell about this situation when an interviewer asks me, how did I resolve conflict? Or tell me about a time that a project didn't go the way that I wanted it to. How do I want to show up for that? It really changes your approach to your day to day when you're not thinking in terms of just this job, but you're thinking in terms of how this impacts how you're going to behave in your next job and what you're going to learn from it, how you're going to pull through. Are you going to deliver anyway? You want to keep doing these things until you start getting offers. When you start seeing offers coming in, you know that you've risen to the level you're seeking. You know that you're doing all right. You're going to start seeing different salary bands. You're going to start getting a better idea of what you're worth. This is great. This is great because now you know exactly where you are. Interviewing is like dating, 100%. All you can do is work on yourself, show up, and put your best foot forward. You can't control others. You can't control the market. You can't control bias, and that can be frustrating. It can be frustrating when there's a dream job out there, but the people interviewing you don't think that you're the right fit for this shaped hole. Very frustrating. But I encourage you to focus on how you show up and focus and just keep your own eyes on you. You want to find people, just like with dating, who see you. You only want people who see you, and you only want jobs where they actually need what you bring to the table. If people aren't able to see you, then they're self-selecting out. You wouldn't want to be in a marriage with somebody who doesn't find you attractive and doesn't want to be with you. You don't want to work for people who don't take you seriously and don't see the value that you bring. And you don't want a job where they needed somebody with different skill sets, because then they'll be disappointed and frustrated with you, and you don't deserve that because you're awesome. So when people reject you, they're not right for you. That's a fact. All right. Now it's time to figure out, when is it a good time to quit? You're probably thinking, well, obviously when there's a clear signal that I should be going. Like maybe there's problems at work, or things aren't financially going well, or I've got a really big offer on the table. But slow your horses there. There's actually an art and a science to knowing when's the right time to go. And really senior people I've met have nailed it. I'm going to share with you what they have shared with me. Ideally, the best time to leave a role, a company, a team, anything is on a high note. You want to go when things are amazing. It's like you want to sell your stocks while they're high. You want to leave when you have really just like knocked it out of the park. You always want to leaving the people behind wanting more. You just delivered an amazing project. You just got promoted. You got a great review. These are all perfect times to consider jumping ship. If you've got a great offer coming in around this time, consider it. It's a little counterintuitive because you think things are going great. That means you should stay and continue investing, but not always. Sometimes things going great is the perfect time to try something new. All right, now for the more obvious. Let's dive in a little deeper on when it's definitely time to go. Sometimes you are in a bad situation and the water is slowly heating up, but you don't realize you're boiling. Here are some telltale signs that you might have missed. You start to dislike the person that you are at work. Oh, here's one. A surefire way to distinguish depression from burnout. If you feel depressed at work, but you feel fine on holiday, you may be burning out. You notice signs of what I call invisible leviathans. These are the consequences of things that you're not privy to understanding. Reorgs, management, organ transplants, funding being moved around. These are signs that there's going to be a shakeup happening, and if an amazing opportunity is crossing your path, you may prefer that change to the change that might be coming. Management doesn't meet your KPIs or key performance indicators. More on that later. Or any of your kill switches have been triggered. We'll get into those later too. Don't forget about your bonus. I lose track, but if you've decided, all right, it's time to get going, make sure you check the bonus schedules. If they're just around the corner, you might want to work on your timing so that you can still collect your bonus and say goodbye afterward. You don't want to leave money on the table. You've been working hard. Make sure you get in there and get yours. Okay, so let's say you've figured out it's a great time to move on. You've been having regular informationals, you've been having interviews, you've got offers coming in on the regularly. What's next? How do you pick your next adventure? Choosing can be hard. Having a lot of great choices really makes decision making difficult. So first, you need to know where your personal compass is pointing. You don't want people outside your inner circle, like hiring managers, recruiters, even your friends, influencing your destination with their own goals. You need to have your own set of goals. I call this the Drasner method. I once asked Sarah Drasner, how do you know what you want to do next? And she replied with, ask yourself these questions. Who do I want to be working with? What do I want to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Where do I want to live? What kind of salary do I want to make? What kind of growth potential do I want to have? What kind of work-life balance do I want? Answer these questions ahead of time. Now, have your own mission. Companies have missions. They want to serve 1 million people burgers. They, want to provide hosting services to the world. And they want to connect everyone everywhere with their families and pets. They all have their own missions. But you should have your own mission too. What is your mission? How does it align to the companies that are coming to you, their missions? For instance, one of my personal missions is to teach people, empower them essentially to solve their own problems. And for me, when I joined the React team, I saw that teaching React to millions of developers would empower them to get great careers and build things that solve their own problems. And I feel really good about that work. There is a process for making decisions. First, you gather information, then you conclude from this information, you come to a decision, and then you act. Now, if you get stuck at any one of these points, you need to back up to the previous one and do a little extra work. If you're having trouble concluding, you probably need more information. What information do you lack? If you're stuck acting, you can't actually send an email, probably because you haven't actually made a decision yet. You need to back up and reevaluate your information. So let's get you that information that you need to size up what these different chapters, these different adventures could look like. First off, you'll want to ask one of these wonderful companies that has asked to work with you if you could speak to someone like you, both on the team currently and who's left the team. If they can't find somebody like that they can point you toward, that's a flag. You would like to know that someone like you has succeeded at some point or has good things to say. If there are no one like you on or off the team, well, you know what statistics say about firsts. Speaking of flags, here's some more to look out for. If they are showing extreme excitement or concern about your social capital, that is to say, they're really excited about how many followers you have on Twitter, or they're a little concerned about your blogging practices, you really need to clarify, what is theirs versus yours, what requires an approval process, and also just make sure if you have, any sort of a following online, make sure that they're excited about you and not just your audience. I have unfortunately seen situations and been in a few myself where it was my Twitter follower account that people are evaluating, not me. That doesn't go anywhere good. All right, promises to grow the role. Oh, we're going to build a team around you. Oh, yeah, we've got plans to flesh out the la la la. We're going to hire someone to take on that work. You won't be doing it all alone. They don't always follow through. How long could you do what they're asking you to do? Would you be happy? If you join as an individual contributor, but you really want to be a manager, will that make you happy? Vice versa, if they say they need you to team lead or manage, but promise that you can go back to individual contributorship at any role, at any time, is that for real? Hybrid roles, unless you're working with a startup. If you're offered the opportunity to join a company in a hybrid role, you want some clarity. Expect you're going to have to pick one or the other of these roles eventually. That is expected. I, for instance, joined React as a developer advocate documentation engineer hybrid. I ended up leaning into documentation engineering because documentation really enables a lot of people to solve their own problems, and that aligns with my mission. Just be aware, though. Definitely look out for situations where you feel like you'll have to prove yourself when you get into the role. You have already proved yourself in the interview process. They would not be hiring you otherwise. If you're feeling that kind of, I'll get in there and I'll work real hard and I'll prove that I'm worthy of the role, back up. That is a sign that there is some serious imposter syndrome going on, and that can hamstring you. That can really set you back in just how you deal with your coworkers and how you believe in yourself. And you really got to believe in yourself in a new role to make it work. Trust your gut. You hear this all the time, but let me clarify this for you. If you have a bad feeling, you should really listen to that. Maybe the money is great and it'll look great on your resume, but can you risk having a bad story to tell at your next interview cycle? Now, FAANG companies like Amazon are okay with weeding out a couple of false negatives. Maybe somebody was an amazing engineer, but they just kind of botched a couple of those tell me a story when kinds of interview questions. They're fine with passing because hiring a person is really expensive. Firing a person is even more expensive. You want to make sure that you're hiring the right person. And sometimes that means you let someone go because they just didn't show up to the interview as well as the other guy. You should be just as ruthless with employers. This is your lifespan. You're spending it on their mission, their projects. If you get a bad feeling, for whatever reason, trust it. Here's some good sides you want. And by the way, good signs are great, but also if you are getting any bad signs, any bad gut feelings, don't listen to the good signs. Over-index on the bad signs, the bad gut feelings. Because things can look great on paper and you can have a really jazzed feeling about a team, but teams get reorged, they move on. Remember, all your other coworkers are eventually going to work somewhere else. You don't know when that's going to happen. So trust the bad feelings, But if you see some of these, be aware of them. Does somebody who outranks you believe in you? You want somebody like at least a level above your manager saying, "Oh my God, this person is amazing. Did you see what they did? Check it out." That is great. That is great. It is great that you've got buy-in at the top. It is great that people will be talking about you in decision-making conversations. Will you be working with people you can learn from? Will you have someone around who could like serve as a role model? Are there people who are more technically adept than you that you want to learn skills from? Now, are these people, this is a big one, that you wish you could be more like? Are these people who have personality traits or work-life balance that you want to rub off on you? We become like the people we work with. We spend so much time with them that a lot of our personalities start borrowing from one another. And that can be a great thing or a bad thing. There's a saying, if you crossed a cat and a man, it would improve the man, but it would ruin the cat. Keep that one in mind. Negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. When you get your offer, you want to negotiate. Seriously, don't just take the offer at face value. I know it's hard to negotiate for a lot of us. We're not used to saying, "I think you can do better." That's great, and it's easier when you see other offers lining up and you can see that one isn't quite as valuable as the other. And then you're able to come back and say, "I have another offer. I think I could say yes if you did this, da da da." You should be able to rustle up more than one offer at a time for this reason. But also, regardless, you should definitely check out fearlessSalaryNegotiation.com. This is a professional negotiator. He's got a little course. You can actually hire professional negotiators to help walk you through advocating for yourself. I think there was a talk earlier about buying back your time. I have found having a professional negotiator draft my emails, etc., for me really takes a lot of the labor out of this process for me and helps you personalize it. Like the company has a recruiter handling you. It does not lie awake at night and think of you. It's someone's job to handle you and land you. Make it someone's job to handle and land the company. All right, you've got your info. Now it's time to decide. It's time to conclude. You could take all those values that you were working on earlier, your mission, et cetera, and add them to your spreadsheet and do a lot of complex calculations. I know a lot of people who've done that and they don't feel great about the outcomes. Once again, feel your feels, feel your emotions. I highly recommend this. You can lean on tallies and numbers if you need a tiebreaker. Now, here are some questions to actually ask yourself. To make this big decision, you can ask yourself, what are you going to be doing in 6 months? Imagine what you'd actually deliver or accomplish in the next 6 months. Who are you going to work with? What praise or hardship can you expect? How's all that going to make you feel? And think about it again for 12 months, for 24 months. Write these things down. Feel your gut. Would you take this bet? Imagine best and worst case outcomes. Now, give yourself a percentage likelihood that they're going to happen. It's 80% likely I would burn out in this role within 2 years, given I haven't managed to hold down a role without burning out for longer than 2 years yet. That's actually a pretty safe bet to make. Is this amount of change and upheaval worth making that bet? Are you going to be rewarded for doing that? How do you feel about that? Does it deliver on your mission? How does this opportunity let you deliver on your personal mission? Does it? Will you get what you want? Your job is a trade. Your lifespan, your irreplaceable, finite lifespan on this planet, in return for what? They get something out of you. You stare at an LCD all day. You solve problems in QA. You handle customers. You design products. What do you get for that? Time that you could be running in a field gathering tubers like our wild ancestors. Time that you could spend working a lower stress job. Make sure that you know what you're coming in for and that you're getting it. Don't sell yourself short for anything less. In jobs, as with relationships, if you're saying they're great except, they are not in fact great for you. All right. Hopefully asking these questions has helped you come to a conclusion. If not, go back to square one and gather more information. It may have made more questions rise up in your mind and you need to revisit that info. But once you have a conclusion, it is time to take action. A few more things. You'll want to revisit these kill switches about the same time you do your interview cycling. I like to set these every time I join a new company. These are the things where if they happen, it's time to go. Ask yourself when you know it's going to be time to go. What are your hard boundaries? What lines do you refuse to cross? Maybe that's you will not work for this company if they do any kind of work with the military, or if you count that you're working more than 50 hours a week or 40 hours a week. Make sure you know what your hard lines are. Write them down. Make sure you're measuring them. Don't slip up. What do you expect to see in 6 months and 12 months and 24 months? How are you going to know that these things are being delivered on, that this pact between you and your manager is being honored and upheld? And of course, how does your mission align with the company's? You might start with an aligned mission, but then maybe you end up moved into a different role. And you find out that that role does not align with your personal mission. This should feel automatic. If your switches are triggered, you should start to evaluate those opportunities in your spreadsheet on principle. This is not personal, it is just business. And whenever you find yourself feeling guilty about something, make sure that you just tell yourself you're doing this on principle. It's a magic phrase. You can use it for so much. Oh yes, I'm following through about this weird credit charge on principle. Ah yes, I don't go out drinking after 9 on principle. Oh, it's great. So, key performance indicators. These are things that are used a lot in product management. But guess what? You can also use them with your company. There's this wonderful format called Biceps. It's a model that you can actually use to talk with your manager about how you're finding your work fulfilling and engaging. It covers your sense of belonging, improvement, choice, equality, predictability, and significance. I have a little form that I fill out every 6 months to track these. If you see a trend going down, that is definitely something that you should keep a mind on. It might mean it's time to move on. Put up a little handy template for you there of the same form. Great, great. So these are ways that you can know when it's time to go after you've made this decision and joined this company. Keep track on these things. All right, time to say goodbye. There's something very important I want you to remember when you do finally decide that it's time to move on. Almost always, instead of posting big, long posts about what you're going to be doing next, it's way better to post a recap of what you're really proud of having already done. Future employers love to see this because it shows what you did in your previous role, and you show that you are leaving with only the best intentions and the best stories to tell. This is a great track record and great way to publicize it. You don't, I know we love to focus on this is what I'm going to do next, this is who I'm joining and what I'm going to deliver. I've actually been deeply embarrassed by some of those old posts that I've made in the past when the thing I was hired to deliver was not the thing I actually delivered. So always focus on what you've done before and then mention you're really excited about going on to the thing that's coming next. This is the proper way to do it. Celebrate your wins. Speaking of endings being new beginnings, I happen to be working on a possible book about surviving and succeeding in big tech for people who don't come from a computer science or MBA background. There are a lot of us misfits out there. You can check it out at that URL, and you'll find links to all the slides links at that URL as well. You can catch me on Twitter as well under the # Rachel Nabors. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I look forward to answering any questions you might have had, and I wish you the best of luck in your next role.